everyone, I'm Bee and welcome back to Read and Roam. In my last video, we analyzed a story to learn about story structure for the upcoming story writing competition. So, what's next on our writing journey? Brainstorming! Let's get started. Before we jump into brainstorming, let's recap what we learned last time. We explored how stories often follow a similar structure of having a beginning, middle, and end, and that authors include different story elements in each part. What do you remember about story elements? These are the building blocks of stories, like the setting, characters, conflict, and resolution. Today, we'll brainstorm story ideas by focusing on 3 story elements: the setting, characters, and conflict. But first, what is brainstorming? Brainstorming is when you think up lots of different ideas without worrying if they're perfect. It helps get your creativity flowing and allows you to explore many ideas before deciding on the ones you'll use. Authors do this all the time before they begin writing. There are so many fun ways to brainstorm story ideas, but today I'll show you one of my favorites. It's super simple. Let's kick off this brainstorming session with settings. Remember, the setting is where and when a story takes place. To help us brainstorm, it can be useful to ask ourselves questions. Where could the story take place? It could be somewhere real, like a big city or Egypt. Or it could be somewhere imaginary, like a magical village in the mountains. Or an underwater kingdom. Notice how I'm writing down everything that comes to mind? When we brainstorm, we record ideas without worrying about whether they're the ones we'll actually end up using. Now, let's think about when the story could take place. Let's revisit those ideas I just wrote down. For big city, it could be set in the future. For Egypt, it'd be fun if it were set a long time ago, maybe in ancient times. See how my ideas are starting to take shape? You don't need to have every single detail figured out, but adding just a little more to each idea can help you later when you write your story. For example, if we add castle, what details could we add? Let's think. What kind of castle could it be? Maybe it's a spooky castle. And where or when could this castle be set? It could be in the middle of winter. Now, it's your turn. Pause the video to add at least 2 ideas for settings. You can write words or draw little pictures. Remember that asking yourself questions can help get you thinking. Here are the ones I asked earlier, plus a couple more to spark your creativity. Now that we've thought up some settings, it's time to brainstorm characters. They can be people, animals, magical creatures, or even talking objects. And they can be made up or real. So, what made-up characters could we add? Maybe it'd be fun to write about a flying unicorn, or even a talking snowman. Now, what kind of character could exist in real life? I could write about an animal, like a cat or a monkey. These are good ideas, but we should add more detail, just like we did for settings. So, how could we describe these animals? We could say a grumpy old cat and a playful monkey. Let's add a couple more ideas. What about a person? Is that a strong idea? It could be if we add some details. A person is too general. So how can we be more specific? The person could be a brave firefighter or a clever scientist. The more you know about your character, the easier it'll be to write your story later. And here's a useful tip. We can use what we just brainstormed for settings to help us come up with characters. Think about who could exist in these settings. What about a spooky castle in the middle of winter? What character might live there? Maybe a lonely ghost or a scary vampire. That's the fun thing about brainstorming. There's no strict order to do things. You can jump back and forth between settings and characters as new ideas pop up. Now you can add some ideas. Pause the video to add at least 2 ideas for characters. Remember, you can write words or draw, and use the questions on screen to get inspired. Now that we have some great ideas for settings and characters, the next step is to combine them to create story ideas that are fun and make sense. We should ask ourselves which character fits well in which setting. Let's start with a big city in the future. I can imagine a clever scientist in that setting. What about Egypt a long time ago? Which character might match this setting? A talking snowman? Probably not. It'd just melt away. He'd probably fit better in a cold setting, like in the mountains. When you combine a character with a setting, they should make sense together. But that doesn't mean you can't get creative. If you want to write about a character that doesn't seem to fit your setting at first, just make sure you explain in your story why and how that character is there. Now it's your turn. Pause the video to match one of the characters with one of the settings. You can use my ideas, your own ones, or a mix of both. Just make sure you pick a combo that makes sense and feels fun. Now it's time to brainstorm the conflict. This isn't the last part of the story, but it's the last thing we'll explore today. Conflict is the problem or struggle that the main character has to face. Can you remember why it's so important? It's what pushes the story forward and makes it exciting. Without conflict, there isn't anything for the character to figure out. So, what kind of conflict can stories have? Sometimes the problem comes from another character, like a friend causing an argument or a villain getting in the way. Other times it's something around the character, like a storm or getting lost. And sometimes the conflict is inside the character, like being scared to try something new or making a tough choice. There are so many options. Let's brainstorm some ideas for the setting character pairs we just made. What could go wrong for a clever scientist in a big city set in the future? The problem could be related to technology. That's what comes to mind when I think about scientists and the future. Maybe the scientist builds a robot, but it escapes and causes chaos in the city. That could make a great story. Now it's your turn. Pause the video to think of a conflict that fits the setting character combo you recorded earlier. Use these questions to get your imagination flowing. And remember, conflict doesn't have to be scary or big. It just needs to give the character a challenge to solve. Great work! Now you've got an idea for an awesome story. Today, we learned how to brainstorm creative story ideas by combining settings, characters, and problems that make sense together. In your lesson materials, you'll continue brainstorming story ideas, then choose the one you like the most. In my next video, I'll show you how to plan your story. Until then, remember, where there are words, there's a world to explore. See ya.
Hey, hey.